Welcome to the HR Stories podcast, listener question edition, where there is a lesson in every story. Each week, the team at HR Stories podcast shares questions from our podcast audience and provides tangible, practical advice that everyone can use to get HR right. Our hosts today are management and HR consultants Chuck Simikian and John Tallheimer. What is on your mind today? Welcome to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story. The Q&A version, the question and answer. Chuck, what are our questions today? Do you want to just dive in? Any little thing you want to talk about beforehand? Anything you want to drop some knowledge? Or do you just want to
well, we've got a great story for next week, and we're actually going to share some wage and hour division opinion letters that came out. So folks, you got to catch next week's episode. But this week, our Q&A edition, we kind of take questions from our listeners and also other places that we've seen maybe something really compelling. And I saw this, there's the AIM Employers Management group. They had to ask the lawyer video segment a couple weeks ago, and someone wrote in and asked a question. I thought, you know what? I want to share that on our show also. So I'm giving credit to AIM, AAIM. Phil Brandt is the CEO of that group. And so I want to thank you for allowing us to go ahead. But it was about someone that wrote in and said, how do we handle an individual who attended department training for several days without completing onboarding paperwork or being officially hired? You know, they hadn't signed their offer letter. They hadn't completed their I-9 or passed a background check despite multiple reminders. And this person goes on to say, we actually marked their offer as rescinded after no response. They were a no-show on their start date, but attended training using the verbal offer timeline. They couldn't clock in since they weren't in the system. Should they be compensated for their time? How would you recommend addressing the situation? John, there's so much to break down on that one, but I guess basically they made a verbal offer. HR or someone made a verbal offer, and then that was it. I don't know what happened. Maybe there was no offer letter.
How did it happen? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
How does somebody come to your training and you're not in the system? Folks, you can't have people working. Training is working without having a W-4, I-9,
Oh my gosh, John, he's breaking down. He's breaking down. So I think when I've seen this happen is HR a lot of times will make an offer and they'll be over here trying to get the process going. And maybe it's a manual process. And so they're trying to get this stuff out. Meanwhile, the manager, the operations manager is so maybe excited, or there's no communication, there's no systems in place, and they go ahead and they start the person. And then HR finds out later because they just happen to be walking by and they're like, what's that guy doing here? You know, that's where I've seen that. So I guess the bottom line, John, is the answer, what do we do? Well, at this point, you have to pay them. You have to hire them and you have to pay them. Even if you're like, well, they shouldn't have been here. And if they're so stupid to show up, then I'm going to fire them. We're not going to, no. You still have to pay them. The big question is, I wouldn't, if you are going to terminate them, I wouldn't tell them that until you say, hey, I want to pay you. We need your information, and get their I-9s done. Because if you're like, you know what, this is ridiculous. We're not going to move forward with you. We'll pay you for your time, but you're done. Oh, by the way, can you bring your paperwork in? You got to figure out a way. Because if they leave you without doing their I-9s, that could be a potential problem.
Well, and their W-4 and like all that stuff, right? And again, right, size of the organization matters and all that kind of stuff. I could see, and I'm not suggesting this, but I could see an owner going, I'll just pay him. I'll give him cash, tell him to go away, like he was never here. I don't want to even deal with any of this. Probably not the best. There's some risk to that, right?
Yeah.
And so again, if we want to reduce risk, what Chuck said is right, and kind of going through that. I see this happening. I know that it happens. Just like, what? How did you let that happen? Yeah. Here's the thing that needs to happen, Chuck. Training for managers.
Yes.
Training for managers, right? We need to get them trained. We need to get them in there and go, hey, look, you don't bring somebody in without their I-9 done, without their W-4, without signing them into the system, whatever. If there needs to be, like, let's say, look, we can't get them into the system. Okay, we can just handwrite it out. We can figure out a way around that, but you have to get that other stuff done. So good. I love it. Okay, what's my next question, Chuck?
Yes. So, and by the way, I want to thank the AIM Employers Association for letting us use their question, AAIME.org, folks. So check out AIM. All right. Our next question, John.
Yes.
I need advice, please.
I got it.
Terminating a New Jersey employee solely based in financial reason, solely for a financial reason. I mean, their work is amazing. Any tips to make the conversation go a little better? Now, it is in New Jersey. I don't know specifically New Jersey law, but overall, how do you terminate someone because, hey, there's a financial reason with the company. We can't keep you, but your work is amazing. And I want to throw it out to you because you actually answered this question on our Facebook page, the HR Team of One Facebook page.
Yeah, and I mean, again, right, when you hear that, like, here we are running a company, I'm the owner, I'm the business owner, I'm the Department of One HR person, and we need to make a business decision that we need to let an employee go. Employee is fantastic, but in terms of our business, we have to let them go, right? And so that right there is a hard decision. HR fight, like, hey, well, what happens, right? Let's make sure that we're doing the right thing by this employee, opening this up. Is there anything else? Is there another role? Is there something else they can do? But when it comes down to it, and the owner has said, that person's got to go, right? Yeah. And so there could be a lot of other things, but typically in New Jersey, your employment at will. And so you do have a right to lay them off. I want you to be careful about the terminology you're using with the employee, right? You don't want to say you're being fired because they're not being fired. They're being laid off. There's no money. You're being laid off. And so explain that, give them some details on that. Again, let them know. And then the next thing I want to do is provide as big as possible severance package, right? And so we're letting this person going. We want to give them as much notice as possible. So maybe it's 6 months if you can, but maybe it's not. Maybe it needs to be in 2 weeks. What is the severance package that you can come up with, right? And so maybe it's typical severance packages, a week for every year they've been there, or 2 weeks if possible, right? So whatever you can do. The other thing that I would do if I was the HR person is I would set them up for success. Meaning that I would give them as much information as possible so they can get hired, right? And so I've been laid off, right? And when I was laid off, they gave me a whole coaching, career counseling organization to work with. So those are some of the things I would do. I don't know if there's other things that you would do, Chuck, but that was some of the things.
Yeah. Did you mention good reference, like a reference letter, a great reference letter?
I did, but yeah, that's a great idea, right? And so, let them know, like, hey, we're going to write a reference letter. Or do you want a reference letter? How can we do that? Work with them. And again, here's what's going to happen, right, Chuck? So let's just walk through this. So the decision's made Monday. And so you decide on Wednesday, you're going to let this person go. Never do it on Friday. You're going to do it on Wednesday, right? And so you go in there and you call the person into your office and say, look, we're running into some financial difficulty. You're going to be laid off. They're going to be like, what? Wait, where's this coming from? I didn't know. they're not going to be able to absorb all this. And so giving them packets and information about, look, we'll give you a reference letter, go through that all with them, but make sure they're walking away with something, and then follow up with them in about a week going, all right, I know it's been a week. I just wanted to touch base. Here's what we said we were going to do for you. Here's the things, blah, blah, blah. Make sure you go down to the unemployment office, give them those details.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, whatever you can do it. So those are all great answers. So thank you. All right. Question 3. And you answered this one too on the site, but I have a different take on it. So let's go. My company books DJs for weddings and among other things. So they book DJs. I guess they're like a third-party entertainment group. We are based out of Dallas, Texas. We pay the DJs an hourly rate of $20 an hour. We add event bonus, equates to approximately half the amount the client pays for the DJ. So all of that really doesn't matter as much because they go on to talk about the event bonus covers time they spend working on music, meeting with clients. DJs all signed a form saying they agreed to this form of compensation. So if I have a DJ who does something incorrect at the event that leads to a client. So I hired DJs and I sent them out to all these events, and there's a wedding. And the client that I sent, comes back to me because they're my client, and they say, we want a refund. Is it okay for us to reduce the event bonus of the DJ for that event as long as they get the hourly rate they work? So I was like, okay. Maybe I misunderstood, but if they're booking DJs if they're not employees, and they're contractors, then it doesn't matter what you pay them. I guess what it would matter is what does it say in the agreement you have with them? And I don't think you're violating any type of labor laws if you decide not to pay them the full amount. What do you think?
Well, yeah. So I think the big question, are they independent contractors or employees, right?
Yes.
And so if I'm hiring DJs for my company, are they bringing their own equipment? Are they just being told, like, the result is I want to have a great party? Whatever, like, what is ever, I don't know, like what you would tell a DJ, right? And so those are the questions, right? So first we have to decide, are they employees or are they independent contractors? Because I think that's the difference. To me, if I have these individuals and they're employees, let's say they're employees, and then we'll go to the independent contractor. If they're employees and they're working and I'm paying them as non-exempt employees, I got to pay them for every hour worked, right? And so they're saying, well, the bonus covers them working on the music, working at home, doing all that kind of stuff. Well, that's hours worked. That needs to be tracked. That needs to be there, right? So they're employees. All that time needs to be tracked. Do you then take money away from them because the client's unhappy? I would say not. I would say if they're non-exempt employees, you don't take money away from them. You messed up by hiring them. That's on you. You need to deal with it. Now, if they're independent contractors dealing with that differently, I would put in a client satisfaction rating that they need to reach to get their bonus.
Yes.
Right?
I like that.
So
I like that. And the key, once again, folks, is, and I would think if someone wanted to press the issue and they could prove that they were employees and you took away their money, there could be an issue. At the very least, you would want to pay them whatever the state or federal minimum wage is, whatever the highest part is. But once again, good breakdown, John. Once again, it depends. It's the old HR answer.
Yeah, I mean, again, we don't. Again, we get these questions. We don't get all the answers in there. I'd be asking them a lot of questions in there, and so, yeah, are they independent contractors or are they employees? Maybe they're treating them as employees, but maybe they should be treated as independent contractors. All right, it's a good question.
John, I just love answering our listener questions. And it just reminds me that no matter what you do, and we always talk about systems and having the right systems in place. So Bamboo HR is an HR system. And it's one that if you are out there, folks, and you're wondering, hey, we need a new system, or maybe we're not big enough for a system, you really want to check out Bamboo HR. One of the things about Bamboo HR, as I have come to experience it is super easy. It's easy to use, it's easy to learn, easy to implement, and it is easy to love. There are clean interfaces, it's colorful, it's extremely user-friendly. If you get a chance, why don't you go ahead and check out a free demo of Bamboo HR. The team at HR Stories is endorsing Bamboo HR, and we would invite you to go to bamboohr.com/free demo. That's bamboohr/free demo, and get back to what you actually love to do in HR. We got a fourth bonus question, which is kind of really right up your alley because you're a performance management expert.
Yes, I am.
Performance management and a coach.
Yes, I am.
And I'm not talking little league coach.
No.
You are a performance coach.
So leadership coach.
So this is from someone that's anonymous. We do let people post anonymous on the HR Team of One Facebook page, primarily because there's a lot of sensitive info and people want answers. They don't know where to turn to. Folks, it's free to join the HR Team of One Facebook page. You want to go to Facebook, HR Team of One, check it out, join, we'll let you in. So anonymous member here says, I've been in HR for 20 plus years, and I always struggle with this situation. We have a manager who's incredibly passive aggressive. I guess maybe says little zingers off to the side. And she's very passive aggressive with her staff and very short. And I mean, probably short with her answers, maybe curt with her answers. That's what I kind of took away from that. Anyways, she oversteps and sometimes has needed to be reminded that she is not the one actually in charge. She is great in all of the areas. She follows policies, procedures, holds everyone accountable across her team. But I have recently had 2 teachers quit because of her. Okay, now there's some red flag warnings, right? How do you all handle this? I feel like just being very honest with her and about the way people perceive her and allow her time to process this. Thanks in advance.
Why do managers allow this to fester?
Yeah.
Right? Because this is the thing, right? And so you know that I'm going to get on my little soapbox, but there's no such thing as a bad employee, only bad managers, right? This person has a manager that is not doing their job. Either they're not paying attention to what this person's doing and doesn't know that they're being curt and passive aggressive with their staff, although people are leaving, that may be a clue. And so their manager needs to take control of this situation. What would I do from an HR perspective? A blunt conversation is not a bad way to go.
Yeah.
Depending on your relationship and how much trust there is. There's not a lot of trust, probably not a great thing to do. And so lots of things we could do with this person, right? And so always as a coach, as an executive coach, when I come in and they're like, oh, we want you to coach this person. Here's my first question, Chuck. Do they want to be coached?
Yeah, right.
And if the answer is no, I'm like, all right, see you later. Because they can hire somebody else, right? People will do it, but they're not going to get better. If I don't want to be coached, I'm just going to be sitting in that room going, now, why am I here? I don't know why I'm here. And it's just a lot of work as a coach to kind of get past all that barriers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so what I would do, right, my suggestion would be, and it's funny because I had this with a client that I've been working with, is I would do, if this was a manager and there was maybe she's on a management team, I would do 360s for the whole management team.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because that way, I'm not picking on this person in particular, but her feedback's going to say this, right? It's going to say that you're passive aggressive, that you're short, right? Because it's anonymous. It's going to come from different people. And then I would then work with that person and go, hey, so what do you want to work on to get better, right? And so have that conversation. And then, like, we have coaches that we can bring in if you want that. And a lot of times when I'm working with these clients and they're excited and they want to be coached, that's the person I want to work with, right? Those are the individuals, because they're going to get better and they're going to get better and they're going to look better and they're going to do that on there as well. That's one way to approach it, Chuck. Well, how would you approach it? What's your take on this?
Well, I got, I just went through a truth class or trust class, leading by the speed of trust. It's a Franklin Covey class. And, the first thing is speak truthfully. To gain trust, you got to speak trust and truthfully. And so I think you're going to pull the person in and say, but here's what's going to happen. I've seen this before. Hey, I need to talk to you. We've had some complaints. We've had some concerns. And are you aware that we've had 2 teachers leave because of you? I mean, after the first teacher, someone should have said something. Now, that manager's probably going to come back and say, oh, those 2, they were slackers. They weren't following policies. They weren't following procedures. They weren't, that sort of thing. Of course they left because of me. I held them accountable. So I think that's what you're going to run into. So I think the conversation at first may be, help me understand, let's dig into this. But ultimately, if you want to save that person and create a better culture, there could be a number of things, John. Could be something as simple as a communication class with a DISC or a Myers-Briggs type of thing. It could be the 360 to kind of help this manager understand based on their, their colleagues, their employees, and their managers. There's a number of things to do, but you have to probably pull them aside right off the bat and say, look, you are coming across as passive aggressive. Okay, but guess what, John? What happens when you say that to someone? Oh, well, give me some examples. Tell me when I was passive aggressive. What did I say? So the bottom line is you're going to go in. There's no way to win this, but whatever you do, you've got to be prepared. If you throw something out saying you're short and curt with people, better have examples. If you say you're passive aggressive with people, better have examples. Hey, 2 teachers quit because of you. You better be ready to. That manager's going to say, yeah, because they weren't following the policies and procedures, which I uphold, which you hired me to do. And then you're going to be like, So I guess you said, based on the relationship, it depends on the conversation. But in the end, what you suggested, some of the coaching, some of the 360s may be in order.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that gets to people, right, in these situations, we're talking to somebody, is asking them this question. How do you think you're perceived in the office?
Oh, I like that.
Right? Because they might be like, well, I'm efficient, I'm effective, I'm da-da-da-da. And then you can say, yeah, you know what? You're all those things, but you know what? You're also perceived as a little passive aggressive. The other day, when you were working with so-and-so, this is what I saw.
Yeah.
Right? And so then you're setting yourself up. And then, because it was one of the learnings of my career when my boss called me in and said, John, you are perceived by your peers as this way. And I literally turned to her. I'm like, do you perceive me that way? She goes, no. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do? She goes, you need to change the perception. And suddenly I was like, okay, well, what behaviors am I doing and looking at? And something that I thought was normal, they were taking a different way. And so then I had to work on that and do that.
I'd love to know what you thought that was normal that everyone else thought was a little abnormal. But maybe that's not an HR Stories discussion for the podcast.
Give me a couple beers, Chuck, and we can discuss that over a couple of beers. Yeah.
Folks, you've been listening to the HR Stories podcast, question and answer edition, where there's not only a lesson in every story, but an answer in every question. Did I get that right? That answer in every question.
So. The one thing that I would want to recommend to all of you, if you haven't started following us on our YouTube channel, our podcast, we do have a video version of this. And some of the faces we make will have you laughing. And so just if you want to check it out.
Take care, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast. The material presented in this podcast is for informational purposes only. Chuck and John always recommend using an employment lawyer or HR consultant to handle any legal concerns or HR issues. We do our best to double check sources and make sure the information we are providing is accurate. We may eliminate or embellish without changing the basic narrative to make the story easier to understand. In certain circumstances, we may change identifying information to protect the innocent. The HR Stories broadcast is brought to you by the team at HR Stories. The team at HR Stories is designed to help anyone with HR responsibilities be better at managing the employee experience. To engage with us, go to the hrstoriesteam.com and learn more about how the team at HR Stories can support your business or nonprofit. Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story.